Morgan, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling very good. I'm excited about this podcast. I'm looking forward to having this discussion.
Nice.
But
You consume quite a lot of podcasts, right?
yes, actually, I listen to podcasts every day. It's either podcasts or audiobooks. I listen to podcasts as soon as I leave home. The first podcast I listen to would be the recap of the Financial Times. It's kind of a bit of a habitual habit, which roundabout takes 20 minutes,
Okay.
which is how much time I need to get to the office, because I live in Dingley. I've moved to Dingley. We are based in Zabuj, which means within 20 minutes I can listen to that podcast.
For sure.
But then I listen to podcasts when I'm driving most of the time, and as soon as I can get back to running, I'm listening to podcasts either when I'm running or listening to audiobooks when I'm running, because that is me time, and I enjoy listening to various topics. Some of them become habitual or routine, like the news in the morning, but others depending on the mood as well.
All right. And last time when we met, you mentioned that you're an auditory learner. How did this podcast wave impact you?
Obviously, for someone like myself who realized late in life that I'm more of an auditory person, it's an advantage, because I can consume various things at times where typically I wouldn't have been consuming anything, or maybe would have been listening to the radio or to some music. This is an advantage, and I very often inform most of our students in the business school as well to take this as a form of learning. It doesn't always apply to everyone, but listening, especially if you're listening to things which typically you wouldn't have been listening to, you're filling time of particularly about knowledge, which maybe some of us in this day and age are struggling to put enough time to be able to read enough books on a daily basis. Because you end up, okay, you can read, but if you want to read and consume a lot of content, listening is one way of filling time. And for example, this morning I was also listening to a podcast on AI. It's a topic I enjoy. We use it for parts of the business, so you keep up to date. I wouldn't have been reading about AI most probably today, because I wouldn't have had the time, because then I'm in meetings, I'm trying to do whatever I have to do on a day-to-day basis. So listening and podcasts are a great way of listening to various opinions, different people from around the world, including Malta, of course. So I think it's an excellent opportunity for many, and those that are not listening to enough podcasts, once they get habitual to it, they'll find it very engaging as well.
I think the auditory type of learning is sometimes underrated as well. I think we take it a bit for granted, I must say, or at least from my experience. And you mentioned that you've discovered that you're an auditory learner later on in life.
Yes.
How was your experience growing up and trying to find different ways and means how you can study and sort of internalize knowledge? And what are the benefits, perhaps, of learning? What is your learning style at the early stages?
I think I discovered this when I was doing my master's, so quite late in life compared to where I was studying most of my life. So, and part of it is possibly because most of the content when I was younger was not available digital. So if you, way back when we were doing our O-levels and A-levels, or even my first degree, most of the content was available through a book, which wasn't even available to view it digitally. So you had no option but to read. But in time, I remember this started off when I used to read case studies on my way. So I used to put all the case studies on my iPad back then.
All right.
This is 2015, so almost 8-9 years ago. And I would be on a flight, because I was doing an MBA in a particular university where I had to travel. And when I would be on the flight, I would be listening. So back then I had to highlight all the text. I had to switch some of the options on the iPad to be able to listen to text. Now it's part and parcel. And I realized that retention was higher when I listened. And sometimes if I had the option, because I was sitting on a flight, I was also actually looking at the screen, so I was consuming dual. But then over time, I got used to this, let's say, robotic voice, because at the beginning it was very robotic.
Now
it improved significantly.
Yes.
In fact, there are many AI.
Yes, that's what I was going to mention.
Actually, you wouldn't tell that it's AI.
And you can use your own voice in order for them to generate.
Exactly. So, but that's how I discovered that I was able to retain better if I was listening to stuff. And also, today we have many distractions, and nowadays we have even more distractions, because you have your laptop, stuff popping on your screen, your phone. So by having at least more than one sense which is focused on what you are doing, and for those people out there who are maybe like me, who are constantly thinking of new ideas and kind of on the next best thing, you need to find time to focus. And for me, this was one way of focusing.
All right. And you work and I know that the education sector is very, very much in your heart.
Yes.
How important is it for students to be aware of their learning, the way they learn, basically?
This applies on the way we learn and consume information is varied. From a business school point of view, we need to make sure that we are communicating. Let's start with the word communicating, rather than using the word teaching. Using various methodologies. Because learning, for some of us, we learn best if I'm reading on my own, having time to reflect, whilst for some of us, we're better off being in a training room, engaging in conversations with the lecturers, with other people in the classroom, whilst for others, it could be a hybrid. So learning as such is vast. And if anything, we need to make sure that, one, if I'm a student, I'm looking for ways and paths which make most sense to me. So if I know I will struggle to do a program on distance learning, I shouldn't embark on a distance learning program by default.
Yeah.
But if I'm disciplined, maybe that's one methodology of how I can learn. But as such, it is about making sure that you are consuming the information in the best way possible, and that the school or whatever you are trying to learn, because it's not about only accredited qualifications, they are communicated to you that work best to your learning styles. Obviously, a good school will be trying to adapt to various learning styles at the same time, and making sure everyone is on board and learning as we go along. In fact, we focus a lot from a learning point of view, because currently we teach mostly further and higher education with the principle of work-based learning. So some of the learning is also done at the place of work, because all our students are adults to date, because that is we're opening that up to full-time students as well as of 2024.
Okay.
And even then, all the programs will include an element of work-based learning, so that will help making sure that people are learning on the job, not only in the classroom. We already have a faculty made up of industry people, so that already helps.
Yeah.
But that's not enough. I mean, we need to keep on engaging. I love technology, so our next project is currently seeing how we can integrate virtual environments and feel that even if you're at home with a virtual headset, you can actually possibly feel as if you are part of a classroom.
Is it because recently I came in contact with a student who was an engineering student who was creating a robot for induction purposes. So, for example, you have a new no, not for induction. That was another project.
Onboarding?
For the fire drill. So they would show the route for fire exits and stuff, and where are the fire extinguishers and the safety points and assembly points via the robot. So you'd have a virtual tour of the plant or the offices, and basically you'll get a sort of like Google Maps. It shows you the way from where you need to go and whatnot. And this is a virtual tour of the premises, but highlighting obviously the route that you need to take in case of an emergency. Right. And it blew my mind when I heard it. So I'm not sure whether it is something similar, if it's on the job, or
it can be.
Okay.
But the way we're currently looking at such options are varied. So some of it is, can we create or produce content using AI algorithms? So before we were speaking about voice, which is not recognizable because it's so good that you wouldn't know it's a program which is telling you, which is basically reading what someone has inputted. So now we're actually looking at creating content with an avatar which looks like a human being, it could be myself, who is actually giving a lesson basically. So we want to blend learning with additional material so that people can continue to study and adapt to different learning styles, and these videos could help. It does not mean we are currently planning to replace in any way the classes, but we are testing various methodologies and seeing what produces the best output for our students. I mean, all we do is based on student feedback. So we will do what the feedback and the indicators will reflect in our ongoing approach. And what we do today does not mean it's applicable in 4 or 5 years' time.
For sure.
Even talking 10, 15 years' time. Because the rate of technology is changing so fast that you just need to adapt to change and be willing to transform yourself as the months and years go along.
Yes, and the technology is already there. So if you see videos on TikTok and other social platforms that produce these short-form video content, the avatars are there. You would know that it's an avatar and not a human being, but graphics will improve. So that's for sure. And classes, when online classes are still recorded via audio. So if they are recorded with the visuals as if the person was in class, so for example using VR or any similar technologies, you're just adding more into the experience of the student.
Yes. I mean, it's all about the student experience. We measure student experience, and that is what we need to make sure we are producing material which is transforming and adding value to the journey of a student when they're learning. Now, cascading it further down, depends which data you look at, but I was born in 1980, so people can make up what age I am. I was born in an era where we had both analog and digital. My kids are born digital to some extent, so imagine we are still, to some extent, having curricula heavily based on formats which are less adaptive to the way people are consuming media today. So I hope that as time goes by, we can use more the digital innovations even at primary and secondary level. By no means I'm saying teachers are not trying to, but the system needs to help them do more of it. So technology and education is fast. I mean, everyone has an opinion on education after all. It doesn't mean everyone's opinion is correct. Even mine. I mean, I have my own biases. Yeah.
No, I think the use of technology is essential, even the software that we use or on our daily basis. The tricky part, I think, is that there are too many options as well. So, for example, I take my example to edit the videos that I produce. There are many. Most of them are open source. You can pay for product as well, but there are various options for open source as well. But then you have to choose the option that suits your needs as well and functionality. So, for example, and this happened over a short span of weeks. As soon as I started producing the videos, I was. It took me a day to produce a video with the subtitles. To put the captions on videos, it takes an excruciating amount of time because you have to extract the text from the video, then copy and paste each line individually, and you have to place the track on the video line. And there is a software today, it's open source as well, that you can upload the video as it is, and it auto-generates the captions, and you can choose the font, you can choose the color of the font. So it saved me hours of work as well.
Actually, to some extent, YouTube does that by default.
It does. At first I was using YouTube, in fact, because it auto-generates subtitles.
I'm pretty sure there's an AI behind it.
For sure. And the technology had been there for
quite some time.
For quite some time now. So it doesn't let you to choose the font and the font.
There are limitations.
Yes, and I don't think that it was done for that purpose. It was done for other purposes, but it was there. Yes, yeah, you can extract the text instead of writing whole transcripts. Those of you have, those listeners who have done transcripts for their dissertation or something, know the pains of writing your own transcript.
So the transcript, the easiest way of doing a transcript would be, not many people know that there is this function within Word. So if you log in to Word online, you can upload an audio file, and as long as it's in English, it transcribes everything for you, including speaker 1, speaker 2. So it actually tells you...
Creates a dialogue, sort of.
Correct.
All right.
So
I didn't know about this. I use a third-party option for this.
No, it's available within Word.
All right.
And most people have Microsoft Word installed as well.
Yes, and then you have to just do micro tweaks.
Yeah, it's very good. As long as the voice is clear, it picks most of the information. It will find it very difficult if you're transcribing data, which is of a financial nature.
Yes.
The program starts struggling there, but for most conversations, it works.
Yeah. And I think for dissertation purposes or projects of this sort, I think that's very good because you can focus on the fun part or most important aspect of the project, the thematic analysis, for example, to extract the value out of the data you collected instead of spending hours and hours. Yes, it is a waste of time, sort of, because it's part of the process, but the tool is there to help us facilitate and deepen our reflection on what we've gathered. So at least that's the way I see it.
So you've done qualitative research.
I did. I done both. I did both, but I'm not very good with quantitative data analysis. I'm not very good with numbers, so I'd rather choose the qualitative approach.
I think that's a common, in my opinion, misconception. Most people are afraid of numbers, but if you are taught that part of the module, so if it's research methods, for example, and the quantitative part is taught with the intent of, so the tutor is not there to show you how knowledgeable he or she is, but I think their success should be measured on how many students they were able to empower in using data and in using numbers. Because very often we're talking about softwares which you will never use in life, like SPSS most probably. Most of the stuff done on an SPSS program for a dissertation, unless it's a PhD, can be done in other applications like Excel.
Yes.
So what we encourage our research methods tutors, not to use SPSS. If someone wants to, we show them. But
it's not the software that I found challenging, because the software was okay. There's a learning curve with any software. It's about choosing the right test for the right purpose.
Choosing the right test for the right purpose.
So, for example, using the t-test.
Okay.
Or explaining
how to interpret t-test analysis.
Yes, whether you need to use the ANOVA or ANCOVA, for example.
Okay.
It's those kind of, in what situation you are, it would be best to use. That is what I found challenging personally. It's not about the software, because the software, once you have the correct test, you just input the numbers and it gives you data.
You just need to interpret.
Yes, and the interpretation, since it's numerical, the advantage of numerical data is that it's very understandable. It's black and white.
That's what I believe. Exactly. That's why I love statistics as well, because I think it makes it much, if you're using quantitative for the right approach, because not always is the best approach for whatever you're trying to study.
So personally, that was my strategy. It's using the correct test for your intent, and I
can empathize with. Because there are a lot of different things you can do, but I think is going to the most common denominator. Don't overcomplicate.
Yeah. What
are you trying to find out?
Yes.
And let's find the best way, the simplest way, because using quantitative data or any data, to be honest, is not to show how knowledgeable you are on statistical methodologies.
Not really.
But making sure that you found what you're looking for.
Yes.
Or you validate or otherwise what you are looking for. And I think sometimes we overcomplicate things. And it's not necessary, because I would love any student that did quantitative, that they feel comfortable enough to use that at work, if they need to do a study, if they need to do whatever kind of survey they might need to do, that they feel confident that they can do so, rather than avoiding it at all costs.
I tried it for my undergrad dissertation, just to challenge myself. just for me, okay, listen, this is something that I'm not comfortable with. Let's do it that way so that I can. It didn't work out as I hoped for at the time because I still not feel 100% about it.
But it got you out of your comfort zone.
Yes. So I think that's the benefit out of it. So I can say that I did both.
Yes.
I have at least some knowledge. Some knowledge about how. Yes. At least I got to appreciate that the foresight that you need to have in both approaches. But for the quantitative, you have to have the foresight that for this test, you have to phrase the question in a particular way in order for you to extract the data that you want to extract.
That's an important part of the skill set.
I didn't know that. So
because ultimately, for quantitative to be valid, you need numbers, right? So you need a good sample. And if you don't formulate, so you create leading questions or you formulate questions which once you collect the data, you realize you've made a mistake or you skipped something or you did the wrong routing. So the homework and the administration part of the tool is extremely important.
It is.
To make sure that ultimately you have good data to work on.
Yep.
But I mean, that's something I enjoy anyway, so maybe I have a bias myself towards quant.
And when it comes to qualitative data, I'm not sure whether they exist at the moment, but in upcoming few years they will do for sure. You upload the transcript and it will extract the themes for you, and I'm not sure whether there is.
There are options.
Okay.
However, I think we're not, from a market research point of view, because that's one of the things we do as a group, we're not there yet. So one of the things we've done recently, and it was a test, and I informed the client whether he would be willing that I test this methodology. And in fact, the test was proven that it can't work yet. We tried to, besides doing it was a focus group, and we tried to use an AI algorithm to predict the sentiment of the people based on their facial expression, irrespective of what they are saying.
Okay.
Because on paper, it's doable, but in practice, it didn't work. The algorithms are far from perfect. But if it's written text, which is what you were referring to before, it's much better. It's already much better. It can predict groupings, patterns,
it's the pattern.
Sentiment of the conversation.
Obviously, you need to.
In fact, it's used a lot on social media. These type of algorithms have been around for quite some time. I think that's what pushed it to become quite popular.
Okay.
Nowadays, it's used less because of the what had happened on Facebook, because they were actually looking at
misusing
data which they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
But that citing was the precursor to this type of methodology.
No, I mean the human element still needs to be there because the human can understand things that machines can't at this day to date. So let's say the sentiment, the tone of voice, what perhaps underlying issues there might be. So it can come close to that, but that's why conducting interviews and focus groups is it's fun as well. So you can notice these patterns as well.
We still have a role.
Yes, we still have a job.
Our head of research jokingly was saying, well, I'm still
for the next 5 years. For sure. But that's true. Some I don't think roles will become redundant. I don't think we will become redundant because the human still needs to be there. But we have to change the way we interact with technology.
Yes. I mean, this is a common misconception. Yeah. And I know there were other podcasts on AI, so I don't want to deviate too much on the AI front. But technology has always been there to help us do something better. I mean, even if you go as rudimentary as the calculator.
That's true.
Today we carry a calculator wherever we go on our phones. So, but it didn't replace a human being. So now let's elevate that on more complex stuff.
Yeah.
AI can help us speed up certain decision making, but ultimately, very often we're still present and there's still a role to be done. But saving time, so being more focused on what we need to do, and not depending. I think the mistake that we would be doing is that we expect that AI will take our role and take at face value whatever is being produced by the program you're using. I mean, in education at the moment, there's a lot of talk about assignments being written by ChatGPT, for example. But in my opinion, ChatGPT should be used regularly by students, but not to do the work for them, but to help them kind of, it's like having a mentor on the side, challenging yourself on thinking in other ways, but you need to make sure that what's being fed back to you is valid.
Mm-hmm.
You need to use it as a tool, not as a replacement of what you should be producing, because ultimately, in our case, if it's education and they're working on assignment, the path, the journey is for them to grow and learn, not to get something off the internet.
Yeah.
And there are many ways of how we can test it. First of all, I'm pretty sure so before ChatGPT came along, we already had tools that most schools use to make sure there's no plagiarism.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we're just a few weeks, months away of making sure that we will know that it is produced with an AI.
No, there is already. There is already. AI detectors, they're calling them, of course.
They're not integrated yet with the tools we use to check for plagiarism yet, but I'm pretty sure I know that one of the softwares we use had a blog about it, so I assume
they are working
implementing
on it. Yes. They need to, because that will be the market advantage for their business.
Exactly. But also, it would be nice to have, to revive presentations and having students present assignments, for example. That is one way of making sure that what's written in the assignment is actually at least was well read by the
transfer of learning has been
by the student. They understand what they've done.
Yeah.
And it would also help most of our local students who would typically shy away from public speaking.
Yeah.
It's changing, but it will take a long time until my first degree was in psychology, and maybe I had 2 modules from my program that involved a presentation. And I remember it was quite shocking, because then when I subscribed on my master's qualification, there was a lot of public speaking required, and I could tell that at some point in time, I felt uncomfortable. It took me a while to get out of my comfort zone and be able to feel comfortable talking in front of 180 people and say something.
There's a jump, there's a leap in that, usually.
But I felt that was very helpful in then eventually do what I'm doing as a business and as an entrepreneur, because my role involves public speaking, whether I like it or not.
Yeah.
So I believe that in this case, we need to be interacting with students, not just from a written assignment point of view. And I believe most further and higher education institutions are looking at these solutions as well.
Oh, it's the way to go, I believe. Morgan, you're an entrepreneur as well. How did it start?
I would say I describe myself. So, how did it start? Okay, it's to some extent easy to answer it. I never saw myself as an entrepreneur way back. I worked for a company for 10 years. Didn't change jobs as such, because after graduating, after my summer jobs, I worked for a company for 10 years. I loved working for this business. But at some point in time, I was feeling constrained on wanting to launch certain new initiatives. And maybe the appetite for those initiatives wasn't there in the business. And at some point I felt I was coming to a particular period in life. I remember it because it was 10 years ago. That's if something starts happening to the business, I didn't know what would happen to that business. But I said, if something starts failing, it might be associated with me, because I was quite senior in that organization, and the founders were quite successful in their journey. And I wanted to test this new idea. It was related to market research back then. It was, in fact, the topic that eventually used for my dissertation and my MBA program. And I was feeling restricted, maybe is the word. And at some point in time, I took the plunge. And I took the plunge and decided to start what is today Esprimi. It wasn't Esprimi, though, the project in itself. Then I had various options to look at, and one of them was to start off on my own. But there was also another option, which was business leaders had existed for 4 years, not as a company, but to run a big business conference once a year.
Mm-hmm.
And my values or my approach was that I would have never taken any client from my
Yeah.
previous employer. I respected them too much, and I had learned as well from that business to actually do that. So I decided that the best way of me launching the business and starting with a platform was to kind of pitch my idea of Esprimi to my current partners today about what we could do and how we could build business leaders as a company besides doing the conference. They liked the idea, and kind of that was the first step. But then what happened as well is that I realized I'm best in creating stuff. So then after Esprimi we created CMPS, which back then was called Academy of Business Leaders. Today it employs quite a lot of people, and it's one of our largest businesses. Eventually I got involved also in with a company called Imdina. Today it's rebranded as Imdina Partners. Anyway, and what happened there, these different interactions gave me the opportunity of creating a number of companies. And some of them are led by myself, but in reality, even the ones where I am the CEO, there are some key important people behind these organizations, because any company is led by people. And my role is so the way I see myself as an entrepreneur in the current businesses is to work on the vision, to work on the business.
Yeah.
Because there are people who can do a much better job than I can on a day-to-day basis, as long as they are working to their strengths.
Yeah.
So I think that's what led to become an entrepreneur. There was an opportunity, which in this case was I wanted to do something which was limited, and I had to find a way of doing so. And back then I had no kids. I never lived beyond my means. I had saved some money without the intent of setting up a company. But thank God I had saved some money, because I needed that money at the beginning. Because for those people listening, entrepreneurship very often requires struggles, requires putting money in the business, making many sacrifices, and taking certain gambles. Okay, some of them very often they would be calculated risks. But there were times at the beginning where we lost money, not because the company was failing, because we were investing and building stuff.
Yeah.
We're employing people, we were building software and whatever, which requires a capital expenditure before you start reaping the benefits. Today I feel I'm very happy, because as an entrepreneur, I do every day what I enjoy doing. I can dream, I can test new projects. Some of them are successful, some others maybe less so, and then you can decide as you go along what's best. But also making sure that whoever is leading any project or any company, it's not about you. Also as an entrepreneur, you need, or at least my approach was, never to make it about me, but to make it about the company and the brand and the business and the people.
You sort of keep yourself objective.
So for me, it wasn't about an ego trip of wanting to become it kind of was a natural progression.
Yeah.
And I don't care that people, in many instances, don't even know that I'm behind the business, or them, if needs be, I'm the CEO of the business. I mean, but that's how my entrepreneurship journey started. So if you would have asked me when I was still at university whether I would ever own a business, the answer would have been no. I wasn't thinking that I would be a good entrepreneur anyways. But eventually, at least my team thinks that I'm well suited for it.
Okay, that's good. That's a good sign.
Because I think they're the best judge of character and the board.
Yeah.
So that's my journey in entrepreneurship, and I would welcome anyone to try. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, there are many things that when you're an entrepreneur or the CEO as well, you don't need to be the founder, but you also when you are at the reins of an organization and when the buck stops at you, I mean, there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to bounce back even when things do not really work out, and be the person that is always transparent, communicative. Am I always communicative? Sometimes I wish I was more transparent. Always, I would never not be transparent. But I mean, it takes a lot of practice as well, and you grow as you go along.
Yeah.
I mean, when I quit my job the first time, well, I think one of my greatest questions was, but will I be a good CEO? I mean, because I was responsible now.
Yeah.
Now I was in the driving seat, and I was quite concerned or afraid at best whether I would be successful. Because in the middle of all this, I was still in my MBA program.
Okay.
So I started this route when I was in my second year. So I was also in parallel juggling and traveling to do the MBA as well. But I mean, it worked out, or at least it seems like it's working out. But I'm very happy that I took that decision, because I feel I was liberated, and although I respect all that I learned and the people I worked for in the past, because in life everything is a lesson. So even and there are things I learned from my previous jobs, that what I should do and what I shouldn't do. And I'm pretty sure, even if I look back at what things I've done myself as an entrepreneur, I would have done many things differently. In hindsight, everyone
for
is
sure.
an expert.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned one key aspect is that, or at least what I've noticed or heard, how do you manage to, or what are the techniques that you use to not delegate, but empower others? Because it's very easy to get stuck in the day-to-day. How do you manage that in empowering others to manage the day-to-day, and you keep on focused on the vision, which is very important?
Very good question, and by no means I want to give the impression that I am very good at doing this, but I work on it every day, which is different.
Yeah.
And what I have tried to do, because what's best is speak from what I've done, is that I always aimed of building a team of people around me that I trust implicitly. And once you can trust the people around you, and trust means you have to be willing to accept both their strengths and their weaknesses, like they accept mine, because I also have obviously my weaknesses. And once the trust is established, then you need to make sure that you are in the business. When you are in the business, you are only in the business because they need you to be there, and your role is to actually pave the way. But then do not get in the way of the decisions being taken by those different leaders. And over time, so I've had situations like the market research company, where I've been working with the head of research, Vanessa, for many years now. So I know that she will always come to when she needs me, but I don't need to kind of be micromanaging. And I'm not a good micromanager anyways.
Okay.
So that's one of the things I say immediately to
That's to your advantage.
who's reporting to me. Look, I'm not a micromanager, so if you expect me to be checking on you as we go along, some people don't want it, but some others would wish that I did more. So I think I communicate what I will not be doing, but I am here. You can have a cup of coffee with me every day if it needs me to speak to me about your concerns. It doesn't mean I will not make time for you. But my role is to kind of support you, or at least be 2 years ahead of the company, of the needs of the company. So we're always ahead of the curve, because in what happens, especially in an island like Malta, as soon as you launch something, I mean, most of the other companies, there's the second mover advantage, right? People that will copy what you are doing. I want to be in a position that I'm always trying to innovate. And sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. But my role is to have this team of, I call it the incubation center, where you can test an idea. So the virtual reality idea, that's not in practice, but it's one of the projects we are planning to start working on. And we will try to also get involved into European projects in doing so, because there are some other further higher education institutes which are already testing it.
Okay.
So you don't need to learn from zero, but you can start the process maybe a few steps where they are. So it's about making sure that you trust, you create and communicate clear values of the organization, and not only to the people reporting to you, but making sure that those values are cascaded down to any employee working in the business. Let me give you an example. One of our key values, which I strongly believe in, is, and it's not a lip service, is integrity. So I always say to any employee, if you ever are faced with a dilemma and you don't know what to do, test it against the integrity principle, and if you think it will pass, even if the company, hopefully we don't go bankrupt because of such a decision, because it's very unlikely that an executive can take a decision. But if you believe that, and there's no one that can give you guidance that it would pass the integrity test, well, in that case you should be taking it, even if it's not profitable for us. Because if in the bigger scheme of things that's the right thing to do, so doing what is right without fail, then that's what we should be doing. And then let's eventually find solutions where it becomes profitable. That's one example. I think the only thing I say to any employee who is not reporting to me, and the only reason why I tell them you should come to me if you need to, because you asked me the first question, am I happy? I ask this to every employee that joins us. We recently had a new person joining our marketing team this week.
Okay.
And I had an induction session with this person, and I told him, for anything you need, obviously there's your manager, and you should speak to your manager. And you should also speak to the manager about what I'm going to tell you now. But in this particular case, if you really want to come and speak to me, my door is always open. And I always say, if you go to work for, let's say, a prolonged period of time, and you are not happy, and maybe the reasons why you're not happy are not related to the company, but you should come to us, speak to us. Within our network, there are other jobs available. One of our the companies in the ecosystem is a recruitment agency. So you should not be concerned in any way that you need to try to look for a job without informing us, because maybe we can be your enablers to find a new job. But what I'm trying to say is that create a culture and the system where everyone feels safe. If everyone feels safe and happy, then it's more likely that the team is being productive. Are we always successful? No. But we always aim to be.
You're conscious of it. You're consciously making an effort to make it work.
And eventually people accept it and realize. We have had some people that, for example, moved within the group, and today they are in a chief operating position, who started in one company, but we realized they were better suited for something else.
Okay.
And that's what a group of companies gives you then. When the company starts growing, more opportunities arise, and people maybe can work to their strengths better in some roles than others. But going back to your question on how I don't work on the day-to-day, but try to work more on the strategies by making sure that I create this relationship of trust with the people who are leading the teams, and let them take the decisions, because they are employed to take those decisions. And I work on what is next, or what I am very often I jump from company to company depending on the needs and exigencies, because if there's a company that requires my support more than another, I might be spending some more time there. But very often I think I add more value on the strategic part. And the strategic part is not just a buzzword. On having, we've created, for example, a 3-year manifesto now, and my job is to work on that with other people. So within the next 3 years, CMBS today is completely different to what CMBS. Because otherwise you start if you stop moving forward by default,
you stagnate.
So, and it works. I mean, also spending time out of the office. So if you are always at the office, by default, especially, we went through this transition. For example, in the business school, we had a school principal who joined us in January, and it was a new role. So we didn't even have a school principal before.
Okay.
So at the beginning, I was around, and I was planning not to be around, but the person told me, be around. But now I already feel very confident that I don't need to be around as often as I need to, and the less time I spend at the office, the more time office this person can implement her own vision on how we can do better. And either I work from home, sometimes from coffee shops, but strategically being out of the business. So
I think that's very powerful. Yes, that's very powerful. Being physically outside the business, I think that is one of the key approaches to help you detach yourself from the day to day. Because if you're there, you're taking for granted that you will have to support, sort of.
And not only that, and your mind, because you're listening, you're observing, and you get sucked in whether you like it or not.
Yes.
Even from a thought point of view, you're still interacting on the day to day.
Yeah.
Whilst by not being there, or by not at least being in a space where you are listening to the conversations, because someone else you're trusting is listening to those conversations, gives you the opportunity to think on the business and work on the business rather than in the business. And I also feel empowered then because I am being permitted to do my job.
Yes.
Because my job is that primarily.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I am doing the job of someone else's who I trusted to do that role in the first place.
One of the things that you mentioned that I really liked is that it's the patience and perseverance to surround yourself with the right people. I think some businesses try to rush or are put in a position that they need to work really fast, but they end up or teaming up with, in inverted commas, the wrong business partners, or hiring the wrong person in that sense. And that creates a domino effect in reality. So choosing the right people to surround yourself, it's like surrounding yourself with friends. It's like you have to have a very good support system so that you can propel the business forward. And I think that's key.
You've mentioned partners. So I've always spoken about the team. I have partners who are non-executive in some businesses because they are the CEOs of some other businesses. That is equally important. You need to have, I'm blessed at least, but sometimes you create your own situation, right? That where I have equal shareholding across all businesses are with people that I also trust implicitly, and I know that I have their back if they ever need me to support them in their executive positions, and vice versa.
Yeah.
If I need them, a phone call or an email or a WhatsApp message away, whatever. But the point is, because if you have problems at partnership level, that starts cascading down. So you need to make sure that you create a situation where obviously your partners, the other shareholders, are on board with the vision and the strategy and the values. Because some people might be on board on the vision and the strategy and whatever you're predicting, but if the values are opposing or conflicting, that will create a very challenging situation. And in my case, I've always had partners, technically, since I became an entrepreneur. Okay, they were in those businesses back then, most of the time non-executive. But I knew that if I ever felt alone, because you get these moments that I can call on having a conversation with these people where I can, I don't know, get some support on the load. And the support sometimes having these difficult conversations and having someone that is listening to you.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm also equally blessed by having a great life partner. My wife is very supportive. I think I wouldn't be able to do what I do today because she's open on, how can I say, letting me take certain risks. Because as an entrepreneur,
you have to.
You are taking financial risks that could actually put your family also in jeopardy.
Yes.
And although I would never try to do that, but maybe one day I might take the wrong decision that would implicate something like this. So my wife is very supportive. She's the kind of person I can speak to. And you need those people around you because, and also she has other important roles in our household, in our family, that otherwise it wouldn't. So we're a team. So you need to have all these different variables and trying. Sometimes they're never equal. Sometimes kind of it's like a dashboard and you're trying to regulate to keep a balance. Because I think the word work-life balance is overrated. I love what I do at work.
Yes.
So to some extent, I spend a lot of time.
Your life is your work in your case, because if you're an
But do
entrepreneur.
I feel that it's work? Very often the answer is no. There are some moments in time where I feel it's work.
Yeah.
I'm work that I don't want to do because there are things in my responsibility that are not things I enjoy, but I have to do them.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I would say I love what I do, and it gives me the opportunity of being happy.
Mm-hmm.
So, to some extent, I think these are all equally important. Team, partners, and partner in life, basically.
But the key is surrounding yourself with the right people for you.
Yes. Yes. And I give a lot of importance to people because I am where I am today thanks to people.
Yeah.
And
is this the law of attraction?
I don't know, because I'm very opposite to my wife on many things, but, so even opposites attract in this case might work. But yes, so that's why I maybe value a lot integrity.
Yeah.
I believe that to work with me, I need to trust you implicitly.
Yes.
And if we break that bond, then we have a serious issue.
Yeah.
So we all work hard on keeping that level of trust. And trust or integrity or whatever doesn't mean we need to agree every time. As long as we communicate.
Yes.
I mean, we can have a serious conversation on disagreement, but as long as we leave the room trusting each other.
Yeah.
And it's still kind of an output.
It is. I mean, it doesn't make sense to agree on everything because everyone has their own opinion. So
that's right.
You're bound to have.
Even from a business point of view, we have different levels, for example.
And that's
of
healthy,
of
actually.
risk.
Yeah.
So because I know that my partners, some have a medium risk appetite, some have a higher risk appetite, and some have a low risk appetite. So very often, and I tend to be on the very high risk, but let's say higher risk. But if I was maybe alone, I would have taken certain decisions at higher risk. But by having a good team around me or business partners, it has, let's say, balanced certain decisions. On some counts, I've asked my partners that are on the low risk appetite, guys, on this one you have to trust me. And because we have this good relationship, they trust me. Very often what happens, then you build trust, right?
Yeah.
If things worked out, or from 10 opportunities, 9 of them work, then there's no reason not to trust. And even if it doesn't work out, tough luck, we got one wrong.
For sure. I think it's healthy to have the argument at the right place and at the right time, because if people are passive in every kind of relationship, both business and even romantic relationships, if everything is plain sailing, for me it means that one of or both, you're not as passionate about the relationship, because if you're passionate about whatever we're doing, you're bound to have an opinion. And that's you want the other person to hear that opinion and try to find a way to work it out. So there might be lack of passion in
that's very
case.
true. That's very true. And you can tell from conversations that sometimes we're Maltese, so they can also be, the pitch can be high. That doesn't mean we're fighting.
Yes.
But especially when someone new joins the team who is not Maltese and has never worked in that environment. But today the team is very mixed, so it's no longer the case.
Yeah.
But it's very true what you just said. I mean, passion is a spice of life as well.
Morgan, you mentioned resilience, the ability to bounce back from any setback. What is resilience to you?
Resilience can be summarized as, in very simple terms, perhaps, is never giving up, being able to take a knee when there are difficult situations, and then able to move forward. Do not get blocked by any decision that you might need to take, no matter how difficult that is, and succeeding in whatever you are trying to do. And resilience is different for many people. And very often it's a combination of many things in life. And when I look at resilience in my case, there may be very different reasons how I've built my resilience as we went along. Because one of them was, so when I was a kid, I I believe I had a very happy childhood. But going back, I mean, I was the eldest of three.
Same here.
So I had to grow up and step up on certain roles as being the eldest from we were three brothers. We had instances of today it's no longer a taboo, but my mom from time to time suffered from depression, for example. So I had to kind of deal with that situation and bounce back. And so when I grew up, I realized that helped my resilience. But when I was a kid, I mean, it was kind of a matter of the situation and having to grow up fast in dealing with those situations. But however, I think what has helped me a lot from a resilience point of view was, and as I told you before I was listening to one of your other podcasts, was sports. Because I was an athlete, particularly in the 1500 meter race and the middle distance running. And the determination and the dedication into the sport formed to some extent who I am today. Because it builds your character. I mean, in my secondary school, that's when I realized I was good at running. Whilst some of, or most of my classmates were maybe going in I don't know what it still happens today, more privat. My privat was not an opportunity because my time after school was training.
Yeah.
So I remember I had to make sure, first of all, that I am listening to what's happening at school.
Yeah.
And then making time to train, whether it's raining, whether it's sunny, hot, and making sure that you are performing to your optimal peak and being able to take the hits when maybe sometimes you don't reach a certain objective and goal that you've been trying to aim at. And you missed it. Very often you're competing against yourself. And this is maybe why it also helped me form, because very often my competitor is not another business, but what are the goals of the company going forward. So resilience is basically bouncing back from difficult situations and making sure that you learn from any situation you've gone through. And as a leader, being able to empower others to also be resilient, because they will also have their own challenges in life, not only at work. And you need to be enabling these people to be able to tackle such problems. And sometimes you won't even know of these challenging situations of people at home. If the atmosphere is positive and open, you probably will get to know very quickly. But the common denominator might be, I might not know of something, and we need to help people overcome any obstacle.
Okay. So resilience to you is about trying to think in a positive way and to always be forward thinking, and at the same time inspiring others to move forward, not necessarily with you, but at least move forward in their own.
Because it's not about you.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to help people on their own merits, on whatever is happening in their life, even at work. So yes, I think being positive is very important for me. Because especially when I realized how important it is when I became a CEO. Because sometimes being kind of the leader responsible for a particular company can become also very lonely. And you need to you need to find ways of making sure you're always stepping your motivation level and your positivity, because sometimes people around you pull you down. So what do? You need to make sure that you are finding ways of always being the beacon.
Yes.
So being positive, even sometimes, I joke about that. So my positivity is X, so sometimes take it a few notches down just to be more neutral. But ultimately, if you don't dream big, the jumps you make are very limited.
Yes.
So I guess being positive on possibly succeeding.
Yes.
And very often you come close to it if you not bang on.
You should have an element of fear when you dream big, because sometimes a big dream is bigger than you in that sense, and that it instills some sort of fear. And I think it should, because it should. It should,
because if there isn't this level of fear, you will not look for solutions or plans to overcome whatever might come along in this journey. So fear, it's like public speaking as well. I mean, fear is also,
Yes.
it shouldn't block you, but it's important not to take anything for granted. So fear in life, I think it's something which you, if used well, it is an enabling factor rather than a limiting factor, because fear gets you to do something. But if it blocks you from doing something, then it becomes kind of a paralysis.
It depends on how you see it, whether you see it as a challenge or a threat.
Yes.
So there's actually a theory on that. There's quite some good research on that. Basically, when you're faced with something, it's the way and your upbringing does play a role in this. It's how you see a situation, whether you see it as a challenge or a threat. If you see it as a threat, the fight or flight instinct kicks in. Yep. But if you see it as a challenge, you try to find a work around it, or you try to find a solution. And it doesn't mean that if you're wired to think in one way or another, you will always think like that. There will always be some situations in which you are afraid of something, and you think see it as a form of trigger. But if you're aware of this, okay, I see it as a trigger. Why? And then you start reflecting on that and try to find. I like to call these counters. Sometimes we have weaknesses, and not necessarily weaknesses, but something that we're not really good at. And it's not about fixing the weakness or simply improving the weakness, but a counter of that. How can I counter it? Or either with my strengths, or whether I can build up new systems so that I can support my weakness. So it's sort of a counter.
For me, fear is one of the most important fuels in life. Because when you're taking risks, fear comes part and parcel. And some of the best ideas came to fruition when I was in a very anxious state. Anxiety, if it's constant, is not healthy.
Yes.
But I think you need to accept, especially in certain positions, that anxiety comes with the job. So by acknowledging that anxiety comes with the job, helps you deal with it. And because I think if I definitely suffer from anxiety from time to time, but if anything, what I need to do is I realize, what do I need to do to tone it down? So in my case, I need to set a new goal, not related to business. Very often it's personal. Okay, let me subscribe myself on the next half marathon or marathon. Because that will, the actual physical exercise will help me dissipate and get rid of some of the anxiety which is unhealthy, get it to a level which I can use, and then implement it. So maybe for me, a counter measure is running in this case. I go back to running very often when I need to reflect, when I'm in a very challenging situation, and very often for me it works. I mean,
I never saw anxiety as this kind of tool, but what I remembered is that so one of the most common positions to be in for creativity is boredom. So if you're bored, you're more creative. But from what you're saying, I can also see the fact that if you're anxious, if you're put in a corner, and I remembered the last-minute exam or the last-minute study, if you're put in a corner, you're trying to find a way out, and because you're trying to find a way out, you might be creative in that sort of process.
Yes, I feel that describes me very well to some extent. So even if there's an exam, I would have been the person that would have possibly waited until the very
same
end
here.
to start studying.
I kind of enjoy the thrill.
So yes, you need to keep it at bay. For instance, you need to make sure that it doesn't paralyze your thoughts or it hinders your relationships. Because when there's excessive levels of anxiety, then it has an impact on your relationships, on your interactions with your team, with your family. I mean, I have 2 kids with my wife, and there were occasions where I realized that I think we're on the red at the moment, and I need to get some steam out of the system to be able to go back to a level of anxiety which makes sense. For the past 10 years, I can't think of any situation where that was never present. It's become
it's the norm.
The norm, yes.
Yeah, it is the norm.
But as I said, trying to keep it manageable.
Yeah, being aware of your limitations, and not limitations in the sense that you can't go further, but your limits, what can you tolerate, the level of tolerance.
Yes.
That's very important. And tolerance can increase as well. But
yes, most definitely. It's a muscle.
You have to read your own cues and your own red flags. So, and same goes with resilience. I think resilience is something that we are naturally doing, because as we grow older, I feel we become more resilient because life throws multiple challenges along the way by default. And there was actually a study showing that the older we get, the lesser the chance of us experience depression gets. However, I think that there's a change. I need to look this up. But I remember there was a study on this.
What I can tell you, that during COVID, we did a longitudinal study on mental health for the Richmond Foundation, and it's public, that's why I'm mentioning the name. And the highest levels of anxiety and depression during COVID were highest amongst youngsters. Yeah. By far.
So there's a correlation.
There's a correlation with what you just said.
And so then it depends on how many times we put ourselves in difficult situations or challenging situations, and so that we can build down on our resistance. Like a muscle, as you said, I think that's a very good analogy. Because very much like a muscle, you need to put tension on the muscle.
Yes, otherwise you don't improve. So, but making sure that it's, your limits.
Yes.
You work, because the limits are different, like you just, for all of us. So as long as you're working within those limits, because I think it's a very fine line. And one of my greatest, if I say, fears in life is, I don't know where that fine line is, or I've never went beyond it, but I have come across people that went beyond it and maybe fell into depression.
Yeah.
And they're not just the family example I mentioned too, but even people, professionals. So sometimes I say, when will I hope I will never reach that stage. Yeah. But if I do, that's a kind of a problem, because then it's much more difficult to go back up from that situation.
That's sometimes I give training on burnout, what's burnout and how to prevent it. It's much easier to prevent burnout than to tackle it once you're there. So that's very much what you're saying.
So I'm very aware of it.
Yeah.
And when I see that I'm on the red for a very period of time, I kind of force myself to take immediate action to make sure, hopefully, this doesn't happen. And I hope it doesn't.
Yeah.
But you never know. I'm a human being like everyone is. And sometimes things happen to you based on the current circumstances.
That's true.
So your tolerance today and your tolerance in a few weeks' time or a month's time might be very different, and you might end up in a burnout for lower levels of anxiety that you're used to.
That's true. Morgan, thank you for this chat. It's been a very pleasant chat. Hope your experience was positive.
Yes.
It's your first podcast, so...
I wasn't very organized, maybe, in this conversation. We jumped on multiple topics.
As we've discussed, I don't have a team or an agenda for the podcast, so wherever the conversation goes, I'll follow or I lead. It depends on the topic, but hopefully found value in this.
I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you for being part of this, Morgan.